Hello, my name is Jimi Famurewa. I am the chief restaurant critic and columnist at the Evening Standard. For today's lockdown sessions conversation, I'm joined, I'm very happy to say, by Professor Green, aka Stephen Manderson. How are you?
Stephen Manderson, aka Professor Green, whichever way around.
Stephen Manderson, aka Professor Green.
It's funny, I get called Stephen more now than I do Pro.
I know. Yeah, I was going to ask that. Which do you prefer?
Oh, Stephen. I'm not like Meatloaf who walks around insisting on being called Meat, which I do kind of love. It is quite.
Well, if we say Stephen, you won't turn around. It's got to be.
It's so weird, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen. Always Stephen. I always introduce myself. People are getting more used to it, but there was a period where I'd be like, "Hi, I'm Stephen," and they'd be like, "You're Professor Green."
Just completely thrown.
Just manners, you know what I mean?
I think so. Stephen.
It was weird though when I got the name Professor Green at 18. It was funny because people who knew me as Stephen would call me Pro P, and then as I started to do well in music much later on, some 10 years later, I'd definitely done my 10,000 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
People, like who I didn't know, calling me by my government, going Stephen, like on the roads, and I turn around and be like I always felt like I was in trouble instantly. You know what I mean? Just how some things can just make you revert to child, like the pitch of your parents' voice when they're pissed off. And I just always was like, huh? And I'm like, do I know you? Not in a rude way, but like because like, you know, it was weird.
Yeah,
so people,
it seems like it brings a familiarity, but
I guess that's my fault for being so personable.
I think so, yeah. But you joke, but you are personable, and you are a amazing advocate for better conversations about, among many things, mental health, and that's something that we want to be the focus of this conversation. And you've as well as being a musician, you've been the figurehead of these acclaimed documentaries and films that have tackled everything from child poverty to suicide and to the white working class and disenfranchised men in the UK. Obviously, we are talking over Zoom. We are in the midst of the third lockdown that we've all gone through. Yeah. Who's counting?
Is it not still the first one? I'm just sorry.
Yeah. It's had I don't think anyone could argue that it's had a detrimental effect on people's mental health. How do we go about looking towards solutions and making sure that the pain that's already been caused isn't furthered as we kind of continue to work our way through this thing?
I think it's incredibly challenging, and I think that the knock-on effect of all of this is going to post-virus, whenever that is, or when we are able to live with it and return back to some sort of normality, whatever the outcome is. I think what we're going to see is the continuing effects of what this has caused as far as people's mental health and well-being. You know, people have lost their lives, people have lost their relatives, people have lost their mums, their dads, their nans, their grandfathers. Some people have lost their kids. I guess a lot of us find purpose in our work if we're lucky enough to do something that we love as our career. And for that, it means we've lost our outlet and our form of expression, which has an impact. I think everyone's suffering varying degrees of it, and I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to manage. I think encouraging people to seek help is important, but it's facilitating the people that need help that's going to be the challenge. You know, you look at how overstretched our services are now. My partner's sister is she's a surgeon on the NHS, and the hospitals are, people are doing double shifts. You know, they're being moved from, because there's no elected surgeries, they're being moved into A&E, and they're having to work double shifts.
There's a lot of talk at the moment, particularly about young children and missing out on school and the things that you miss out on just from kind of attending classes in person and people falling through the cracks. There's a lot
in it though. So that's really what's I guess is I mean, as far as, education, people can catch up. I think if you
Mm.
were in an exam year, it's probably had more of an impact.
Yeah.
I think education-wise, people can catch up, but I think the lessons we learn from each other as kids, are what people are missing out on.
Mm.
I mean, imagine being a kid and being, the fear of contact.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Not being able to see their grandparents. Why is it not okay for me to hug Nan? Why is it
Yeah.
not okay for me to hug Granddad?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
can't I see my friends? What questions you can answer for children, but they don't really have the tools to navigate this situation in a way that we do as adults. And
Yeah.
with that said, it's hard enough as an adult.
Yeah.
You can say, "Oh, they're kids; they're oblivious. They're sponges. They're absorbing all of this." And it's probably, I can imagine it's quite stressful for everyone that's having to homeschool, or everyone that has the fear of, people who are working on the front line. My partner's sister, she has
Mm.
a child. He has to go to nursery. So she's working on the front line. He's going to nursery. Someone comes,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that there's just a lot of fear
Mm.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Not helped by repeatedly being bashed over the head every time you turn the news on with, figures, horrible figures without any context.
Yeah.
It's
No, it's kind of unrelenting, and I think that's the real noticeable thing about this particular lockdown, that there's no kind of end in sight, and we're kind of trying to find bits of hope wherever we can. You mentioned there homeschooling. That's definitely something that we've had to navigate in my house, and trying to work at the same time, and everything's happening in the same space, in the same room. So that's definitely something that I have found challenging, to say the least.
and it makes you end up having a weird relationship with your house, because for me, this was solace. This was my safe place. This was where, when I shut the door, the rest of the world stayed outside. Obviously, I have to, like, I work on music and stuff at home, and there's bits that I'll do at home, but largely I was able to do most of my work elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I don't want to associate home with the stresses of work, of which there are many, be it a Gulp or Giz and Greens. They're two startups. There's a hell of a lot of work that has to be done, and it's stressful. And then that has an impact on your relationship, because you're coming off of a phone which has stressed you out, and you wouldn't normally have that conversation in earshot of your partner,
No.
let
No.
alone straight away then have the conversation and relay everything that's just happened on it. And then it's like, this stuff shouldn't be bleeding into our relationship. So you've got people at home who are suffering all of these things, and everyone's having to live, we're lucky we have space, but we are still somewhat on top of each other, right? Which is just different. We're going to look back on it and be happy that we were able to spend this much time together, because there'll probably never be another time in our lives when we will.
Yeah.
But that doesn't need to say that it doesn't present issues. And for people when I think about how I grew up, there were 6 of us in a 3-bedroom flat. If I was in that situation now, how would I navigate that?
Yeah. Yeah.
How are families who are in, relatively small quarters dealing with this? It's hard, huh?
There's a growing feeling that there should be money devoted to well-being, just kind of making sure that everyone's kind of okay in terms of the trauma that we've all kind of gone through, varying degrees. And sort of, I wonder, do you think that that's something that should be put in place? And is it as simple as, here's some money?
No, nothing ever is it? Nothing. Throwing money at stuff is never. It's obviously things cost money. So to facilitate the support that people are going to need, we're going to need money. But just throwing money at something doesn't. I just think we all too often we have a government that will be seen to be doing just enough to be seen to be doing something, but never actually doing quite enough, in my thoughts anyway. That's kind of how I see it. Same with the whole school meals thing. Had they not have been pulled up on it, and had it not have been highlighted, it never would have even been an issue. I grew up on free school meals. My nan used to take vouchers to the local GPs to get my powdered milk when I was a kid. I grew up on that, and it was normal, because everyone at my school was on free school meals. I didn't really know any different. The fact that you know, just the idea of a kid, like, how do you, I mean, we have the saying food for thought, right? How do you expect a kid to flourish, to be able to sit down and focus and learn and engage it, on an empty stomach? It's really sad, man. The idea of kids going hungry is not,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
not, it's not that easy to
No, you're right. Yeah.
comprehend, and we shouldn't
Yeah.
have to. You know, I've heard politicians say they're proud of our food banks, which I think isn't. It wasn't something that made me very happy when I
Mm.
heard that. It's like I'm proud of the people that volunteer.
Yeah.
And I was at a food bank in Streatham recently, and it's the size. It's I forget the name of the church, but it's the size of a small supermarket. But most of the donations are personal donations.
Right. Wow.
They're not from corporations.
Mm.
Most of their workers are volunteers. They have
Mm.
150 people working there,
Yeah.
and they can only facilitate half of the demand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is not people. I think there's a real sort of like, there's a really sort of shallow parody of the working class and of those less privileged,
Mm.
and the picture of someone who uses a food bank.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
reality of it is much different. You know, Benefit Street doesn't really do us any favors, you know,
Yeah.
but it just feeds into that shallow parody. But actually what you have is, you know, the government will flout, you know, not at the moment, obviously, because of COVID, but prior to it was always, you know, we've got more people in employment than we have in X amount of years. But what they fail to mention is that we have more people in employment that are beneath the breadline. They're working to earn their poverty.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
People
Yeah.
in full-time jobs having to rely on food banks
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to feed
These
them
are
and their
all,
children.
yeah, you're right. These are all things that just kind of exacerbate the problem. In terms of, you mentioned Giz and Greens there, in terms of how is it, what has this been like for you, like personally, to have come through this experience with a new kind of line of, you're now a restaurateur, and now you're a kind of
I
what,
feel
what's that like?
so lucky. We opened the restaurant right in between. I think it was between the first and the second lockdown, and I thought I was like, Gizzy, we're crazy, and she was like, we're doing it, because we were going to start out with a pizza delivery business, so it was going to be a virtual brand and delivery only, and then we got the opportunity to do the pop up at Paso on Old Street. I was like, Gizzy, this is a big old place. Like, are you sure we should be opening a pizza pop up in the middle of a pandemic? She's like, we're doing it. Okay, all right, I'm going to follow your lead on this one. And it would, you know what? It actually went in our favor, because we didn't have to do any work in the restaurant as far as socially distancing people, because it was so big that people were by default socially distanced.
Yeah.
We sold over 16,000 pizzas in 2 months. It was insane, like the response to it. And at the same time, it wasn't just about us having success as a restaurant. We were able to unfurlough people. We
Yeah.
were able to give people business, and this is what's forgotten, right? I saw a meme the other day about hospitality causes, what was it? It was on DJ Fat Tony's Instagram, and it was something about the hospitality industry being to blame for the snow or something. And I was like, it's been, you know, the hospitality industry is such a huge contribution to this country.
Yeah.
And actually it's quite weird when you think about the places where COVID is spreading versus the places they've shut down, because actually where you're forced to sit in a restaurant that is socially distanced and people are obeying rules, it seems,
Yeah.
it doesn't really make sense to me that
Yeah. Well, I think that the point
everything's,
you made there about, it seems like for you, it was really important as well, in terms of being able to be active and to be able to do something, and something born
yeah.
from crisis, really. Like, and
You know
that's
what, though? That's been the story of my life, Jimmy.
mm,
That's literally everything in my life has been born from crisis.
mm,
Almost everything. It's yeah. I guess it's probably one of my better talents.
yeah, yeah.
Taking something bad and putting a positive spin on it.
Where do you fall on the side of social media and its kind of impact on people's mental well-being at this time, and sort of the use of it? And personally, how have you navigated it? Obviously, you've got a huge following on Twitter and Instagram especially, and it's clearly given you so much, but do you have a love-hate with it? Do you kind of turn it off sometimes forcibly?
Um, I've social media is a bit like a gun. Bear with me. A gun doesn't kill anyone on its own. You know, it has to be picked up, aimed, and fired, doesn't it? Social media is something that we choose to use. I don't think it in itself is negative. I hope in the years to come, we're going to look back and think, Jesus, we had this incredible way of connecting everyone on the planet, and we used it so stupidly for vanity and for, you know, it was completely mispurposed. And then we'll get it right, because it is wonderful, right? There's no doubt about it. When used correctly, it is one of the most incredible things in the world. But then there's like, you have almost everything at your fingertips, and you end up looking at bloody videos of cats that are scared of cucumbers. My cat, by the way, is not scared of cucumbers. I tried to scare her with one, and she wasn't scared.
Sure, yeah, great content if she was.
But but most searched thing on the internet, apparently, cats and babies. But I think listen, I think it comes down to consumption, man. Like my great grandmother always used to say, a little bit of what you like won't hurt you. Sort of true. Over time, things, you know, can accumulate, and they will. But I think it is down to your control of your consumption. It's like the news, you know, I don't watch the news as often as I would normally, because I cannot bear to be affected the way I didn't realize I was initially, because it was so negative. You can't watch something that negative and that repetitive and not be affected by it. So for my own well-being, I switched off. I like being up to date on current affairs, but I choose which channels I use to keep up to date on things outside of Corona. Because I can't bear to see the numbers and statistics without any context and the ramblings of a man with a wild haircut anymore.
And just finally, I saw you using your social media at some point. I lose track of which lockdown, as we all do. But you were talking about, you were sort of making the point of like that you were in the same situation. You were stuck at home. You were sort of going through it at a time when a lot of people in the public eye have kind of
in Dubai.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, to sort of maybe play devil's advocate for a moment, we're talking about mental health and people struggling. A lot of people will probably, they might say that, oh, they needed that, or they were in a bad place or whatever. Like, how do you kind of approach that?
I just think I'm going to be honest, yeah. And listen, there's people I know that this might offend, but I think people are tone deaf.
Yeah.
Like, are you not looking at what's going on in the rest of the world? Same way, enjoy yourself, do what you're doing, and do what you can do. Right? That's all any of us can do, really. And I get that side of it, but same way, I think like it just, some of it just feels a bit tone deaf. Like people are suffering. Like people are suffering anyway, way before COVID. You know what I mean? Like, and I think sometimes people lose track of the vibe a little bit. They get a little bit lost as to what the actual,
that's the point at which that's the point at which your background glitches out and it reveals that you're actually in like Abu Dhabi, or like you're on a beach somewhere, and you've
Hey, I would love nothing more than to be on a beach, but it's not the time for it, man. It's not the time for it. You know, I do as much as I have to and as little as I have to, if that makes sense.
Well,
the most, I think the one thing that we could all encourage each other to do is just take care of each other. If there's any good to come from it, it's, you know, maybe we made an effort to look after each other. Kind of weird. It's the first time in our lifetimes that the entire world has suffered the same thing at the same time. And weirdly, it's, I don't know, it's put us further. I don't know. We don't feel any more connected. It's quite it's a weird thing.
Well, I think, take care of each other, take care of yourselves is a really good point at which to end this conversation, and good sort of words to try and heed as we go ahead. And
Yeah, man.
hopefully
Check on your people, because I had to do it recently. We were all getting lazy. None of us were talking to each other. We were all sort of starting to invert.
yeah,
So yeah, man.
impulse, isn't it? Yeah.
Check in on your people and keep it up, man. Don't get lazy.